The flame burns. It doesn't unburn. And once it's burned, you can't put the smoke back into the wood. This is entropy, and it's one of the fundamental laws of physics, and it's present in every corner of your life. So if we're going to talk about living life well, we're going to have to talk about developing our relationship with entropy. Hello, I'm David, and welcome to Efficient Wisdom, where it's all about principles for life with minimal hype, where I collect my favorite takeaways for life and little chunks of wisdom from the worlds of psychology, philosophy, science, and ethics, and then do my best to boil them down into t-shirt sized statements. And today we're going to be talking about the shirt that actually started it all. This is the shirt idea that led me to start Efficient Wisdom, and that shirt is anti-entropic device. So yes, today we're going to be talking about fixing your relationship with entropy, because chances are it's one of the main sources of frustration and missed opportunities in your life. So I've put together 6 basic strategies for dealing with entropy. But to do that, we first have to understand what entropy is and what rules it follows. And yes, entropy is a physics term, and we're going to talk about physics. But don't let that scare you. There will be no test on the physics part. This video is really about principles for living life well and fun t-shirts. But there is definitely a test on the living life well part, but it's the same one that you take every day. But the laws of physics can work as little metaphorical instruction manuals for life, which is really cool, but I know, who wants to read the instruction manual, and I'd rather just sit there and watch some YouTube video of some guy telling me about, oh, wait, hi, here we are. David read the manual and he can just tell us what it said. But do we trust him? I don't know. Looks like he needs a haircut. Knows guitars. Crazy hippie. So let's start by getting some of the science-y stuff out of the way. Entropy comes from an area of physics called thermodynamics. Thermo meaning heat or energy, and dynamics meaning movement and or relationships or transformations. So thermodynamics is simply the study of how energy moves and interacts. When it moves, it has a way it wants to go. It has a preference, and that preference profoundly shapes our world. Consider this dropper of food coloring and this glass of water. All of the water is in one place and all of the food coloring is in another. We can think of this as ultimate order, and entropy is often thought of in terms of order versus disorder, or how concentrated versus how diffuse something is. So this would be considered the lowest possible entropy, because the two things are completely unmixed, separated, everything in its own place. We have an all and a nothing. Now, entropy is essentially the universe's natural tendency to move from order toward disorder. You know what's going to happen once we put the drop of food coloring into the water. It's going to naturally spread itself out. We also know that once it's spread out, it's going to be very hard to separate it again. That's basically entropy. So if entropy is the constant natural movement toward disorder and spreading out, then being an anti-entropic device is all about putting things back in order or bringing them together again. And this is our lot in life. This is what it means to be alive. You know how much maintenance is required every day. You know how fast you have to run just to stay in place. And it's not just about your physical reality. It's also about your emotional and spiritual life. These also need maintenance because without it, they too have a natural tendency to disorder and dissipate. But if you do enough maintenance and you learn to do it well, you may earn the opportunity to also create something new on top of that, something more, something better. And that is the ultimate goal. This is what our dreams are made out of. So as we dig through the ideas of entropy and the scientific terms, think about how they relate to you and the hopes that you have for what you'd like to build with your life. Some of the strategies we're going to talk about may sound familiar, but perhaps they deserve a hard second look. Entropy talks about 3 things. 1, how energy naturally moves on its own, spontaneously. 2, how it could move if pushed or manipulated from the outside. And 3, how it can't move. And it's a good idea to know the difference between these. As I said, these laws make nice little metaphors for life. So it's good to know what naturally happens in life, what could happen in life, and what can't happen in life. So let's talk about what happens in life by default. spontaneously. We've already alluded to it in our entropy definition. One thing that naturally and spontaneously happens in life that we all know about is that things wear out. They break down, they get dirty, they get used, and it's endless. Things don't spontaneously fix and clean themselves. We wish they did, but they don't. We have to do that. So that's kind of the pop culture definition of entropy, that things fall apart. They don't need your help. Now, you could certainly speed it up if you wanted, or sometimes you might do that by mistake, but it's not necessary. In other words, there is a natural tendency to move from order toward disorder. Entropy is why you need to put a new roof on your house, take your car into the shop, and clean a never-ending pile of dishes. It's the constant decay and disordering of the things that keep you alive, safe, and comfortable. So because of that, entropy keeps you pretty busy, and that can be really frustrating. It can make you feel like, well, you're never getting anywhere, because as you're putting things together, entropy is busy over there taking them apart again. And it can feel like you're endlessly running on the hamster wheel. And it can feel endless because it is endless. It's a law of physics. To survive, you have to endlessly combat one of the fundamental laws of the universe. So, like it or not, you are an anti-entropic device. So how do we deal with that? How do we keep it from driving us insane and ruining all of our productive efforts? Well, that's what I want to talk about here, because we're stuck with entropy and we're stuck with having to push against it. So as long as that's the case, we should learn to do it well and maybe even do it with some amount of grace. So the first strategy is just acceptance without resentment. I know, I'm sorry, that's not an inspiring answer, but some percentage of your life will be given over to combating the forces of entropy. Life requires maintenance. So give to entropy what it demands and do your best to do it without too much resentment, because resentment has no power over entropy. It only has power over you. The next strategy is to seek hidden opportunities for joy. Sometime back in my college years, I was introduced to the band The Flaming Lips. And not just their music, but I was able to actually spend some time assisting in the studio when they were in there making one of their records. And I can't remember whether this story was something that I had read somewhere or whether something that Wayne, the singer, had said to me directly, but when he was younger, he worked in the back of a Long John Silver's, which was a fast food seafood restaurant. And as he was telling the story, I really expected him to start cursing that job. But he said that he loved it because it didn't require a lot of his mental space, and he could be there earning money while planning, creating, and dreaming about music. And that really struck me because he had found a way to be honestly joyful about something that most of us would spend our time complaining about. So now I have a family, and one of my jobs is to do the dishes, and they stack up pretty fast. And we actually do them by hand in my house on purpose. But that's a story for another video. But I've learned to treat it as planned downtime that I use to do some YouTube research, or maybe listen to an audiobook, or just think about what I want to talk about in these videos. So I actually look forward to cleaning up the dishes now. And honestly, I'd still enjoy it without any videos or without any audiobooks, because it's no longer about dirty dishes. It's about personal reflection time, or education time, or creative time. So that's what I mean about finding some strategies for joy in your anti-entropic obligations. There are often hidden opportunities in the endless busy work that faces you every day. And it doesn't have to be about multitasking. It can just be about finding some personal space, or a spiritual practice even, of aligning yourself with the nature of reality. Have you ever seen the Buddhist monks who create those amazing sand sculptures? And it takes them weeks to build these things. And then once it's done, they just wipe over them and start again. Now that's a spiritual practice of coming to terms with entropy. But beyond acceptance, there's always the most powerful emotional and spiritual mindset, which is gratitude. Because there are plenty of situations in life where you're not even granted the opportunity to fight entropy. So remember that and honor that with a little bit of respect and gratitude. But also there's a far bigger reason to have gratitude for entropy. We often think of entropy as the forces of decay and death. And that's fair. That's one side of the coin, but that movement toward decay and death that fuels creation and life. I feel like I'm supposed to jump into some Lion King song right now about the cycle of life. But anyway, entropy is why we have fuel, because entropy is what turns fuel into heat or work. It allows us to run our machines and digest our food, and it's why the sun burns. So you may hate doing the dishes, but it's certainly better than the alternative. So now let's talk about what can't happen in life. We know that energy, and just about everything else, tends to move toward disorder. And because of that, it provides the universe with a sense of direction, or time. Entropy is often called time's arrow. It points the way in which the universe unfolds. And one way to think of that is that both get spent. And once they're spent, they're gone. Remember our match? And one small spark and it burns, and the wood becomes the smoke and the heat diffusing and disappearing into the air. Well, energy is moving and spreading out, and it only took a tiny spark to get that moving. Well, that was easy. So now, put the match back together again. Shit. Well, good luck with that. And that's another big thing to know about entropy, that some processes are irreversible. They only move in one direction, but not the other. Potential gets spent. That is time's arrow. The flame burns, it doesn't unburn. So in this case, entropy is telling us what can't happen in life. You can't undo time. You can't reburn fuel. Once potential is spent, its productive time is over. Now, if that's not some kind of metaphor for life, then I don't know what is. Energy moves, and boom, the universe was born, and the all and the nothing started to dance, mixing and burning and spreading out, creating amazing complexity and beauty as they moved. Now that's really amazing. And then all of it marches irreversibly in one direction. Okay, so then on the flip side, that march is constantly breaking things down and spreading them out. It's burning the flame. And our primary resources in life, our time and our energy, are always being spent, whether we like it or not, because that's the laws of physics. And the same fuel that creates life also creates its limitations. That which gives also takes away. Entropy suggests that this dance will eventually all play out. If everything moves in one direction and enough time goes by, eventually you will get there. So just like entropy will eventually have its way with the food coloring, it will also have its way with the universe. But in the universe, that's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of years from now. Right now, we're back here. Right now, we've just started to dance. We are that complexity and beauty unfolding and becoming. We are the result of the creative engine of entropy playing out. So what do we do with all of this? What do we do with irreversible time? What does it mean to us in practical terms? It means wake up. It means carpe diem. It means that time is a limited resource. It means that the energy you control is a limited resource. So respect them and treat them as such. The game you're playing now gets played once. It means be mindful of the irreversible processes that you're unleashing. You might want to save that energy for something more important. And there are matches that are easily lit but that you don't want to burn, and roads you don't want to go down because, well, there's no coming back from some of those roads, or at least you're not going to come back the same. So chances are you know what these roads are instinctually. So listen to that inner voice. Not with anxiety and resentment, they weaken your anti-entropic abilities, but with respect and gratitude, they make you stronger. So we've covered what entropy says happens in life naturally. Things tend to fall into disorder. And we've covered what entropy says can't happen in life. You can't get back time or spent fuel. So now let's talk about the most interesting one, what life can do if it's pushed or guided or directed from the outside. Well, one thing we can do is slow down time. Whoa, wait a minute. Is that possible? You can't reverse time. We just talked about that. So I can't imagine you can stop it or even slow it down, but we could slow down the effects of time. The match can light and burn, but it doesn't have to. Entropy only says that if energy moves, that it will trend in a certain direction. It doesn't say that it must move. We have the capacity to design systems, machines, and even ways of life that are anti-entropic. We find ways to make our cars more efficient. We make insulated coffee mugs to keep our coffee hotter longer and to save our hands and fingers from being burnt. And like the smartest of the three pigs, we build our houses out of bricks instead of out of straw. These are anti-entropic strategies. They slow down the entropic effects of time. The more efficient you are at avoiding entropy or slowing it down, the less you have to spend your irreversible time and energy putting things back together again. Now, I have kids, and every parent knows that kids are often little entropic devices. They leave a trail of dirt and destruction behind them as they explore the world. And this additional entropy is one of the great challenges of parenthood. So naturally, a part of parenthood is helping them to develop their anti-entropic skills. Now, they don't want to clean or organize any more than you do. In fact, they haven't even had a chance to learn what the value of that is yet. But if you're willing and consistent and patient, you can teach them to be responsible for taking care of their own entropy. And then you have more time to spend with them instead of with their messes. Now, you can relate that back to yourself as well. The more responsible you become for handling your entropy, the more time you can spend with yourself or with the things you love doing rather than cleaning up messes. And the exciting part about this is that most of life is built out of patterns. Every day you wake up, you take a shower, you get dressed, you brush your teeth, you eat some breakfast, you drive to work and whatever. And these are things that you repeat hundreds or thousands of times. And those little moments can add up to hours, days, weeks, months, or even years. And entropy is present in all of them, like it is in everything. So one small repeating missed opportunity can cost you half a lifetime. So when you find yourself with a rare free moment, think about reinvesting it into strategic entropy abatement, or as my wife likes to call it, systems of efficiency and effectiveness. And she is a master at pulling maximum value out of limited resources. So look for your opportunities to slow down or even stop entropy. Don't use more energy and time than you need to. Change the oil in your car, insulate your house, brush your teeth. Create systems that repeatedly save you time and increase the order in your life. Create better habits. Habits are your brain's way of automating, and automation does the same job in less time with less fuel. Thank you, Henry Ford, and thank you, biology. So, okay, we can slow down entropy to reduce the burden of maintenance. But at the beginning, I talked about maybe even earning the chance to create something more or better or new. So what's that all about? So let's go back to my vacation last week with the kids. This is a cool sandcastle we found on the beach. So how long do you think it's going to be before some kid goes joyfully tumbling into it, quickly turning it into a disordered pile of sand? We all know that turning sandcastles into sand is far easier than turning sand into sandcastles because that's entropy. But it's still possible. This is a reversible process. Obviously, the universe isn't only moving toward decay and disorder. We clean our dishes, we fix our cars, and we can even put a roof on a house, right? And what about us? The saying goes, from ashes to ashes, from dust to dust. Well, the to ashes and to dust part is talking about entropy. But the from ashes and from dust part is talking about the most anti-entropic force we know of, which is life. We start from ashes and dust, but we become wildly complex, ordered beings. In fact, we are the most complex systems that we know about in the whole universe. And that's a startling amount of order brought about from some highly disordered dust. We are wildly anti-entropic. Things may tend to disorder, but they can also order. They just don't do it on their own, spontaneously. They need an outside push. And that's where we come in. We push. And that's what we're doing when we clean or repair or build or procreate. Because that's where the opportunities are. That's where the magic of the creative engine happens. Are you following me? Because this is where it gets a little bit tricky. We push, and that's how we reverse entropy. But pushing is work, and work requires energy. And we get our usable energy from entropy. Mostly the irreversible kind, like burning the flame of our match. In other words, we have to increase entropy in one place in order to decrease it somewhere else. To do anti-entropic work, entropy demands a trade. And entropy is a tough negotiator. It will only accept a trade that is good for entropy, that spends more entropy than it returns. And that's the law. That's the second law of thermodynamics. So the trick in negotiating with entropy is finding a trade that is good for entropy, but also is good for you. You need to become a master at win-win negotiations. The saying goes that one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? Well, what you value is often very different than what entropy values. And you can trade something with entropy that you don't care very much about in exchange for something that you do care a lot about. Think about a beautiful piece of vintage jewelry, perhaps a wedding band that was handed down from your great-grandmother. Now, digging the gold from the ground and shaping the ring took some work. Effort and time were burned doing it. Entropy exacted its price. But its significance to you is far greater than the physical labor. You are able to wear a beautiful reminder of the rich history of your family and the anti-entropic work they invested that led to your creation. a tradition that you're now carrying forward as you begin your family. And that motivates and humbles you and reminds you of the depths and the bonds of family. But entropy doesn't care about any of that. It just cares about the labor required to make the ring. Burning that fuel was a win for entropy. And you've decided that carrying that ring on your finger is a win for you. So, fair enough. Trash and treasure. We are not only creatures of the physical world, but also of the world of meaning and sentiment. And that's often where we find our win in the trade. Not always. We also search for the necessary trades in the physical world as well, but life and humanity are up to a very different game than entropy. So it's possible for both to win, in my opinion. What is really worth your time, your effort, and the other limited resources within your control? And that's important to figure out, because otherwise your energy gets wasted on useless tasks or collecting meaningless junk or spent on people who are not going to reciprocate. It's all just sugar that keeps you entertained and distracted but leaves you empty in the end. You're on the hamster wheel spinning and sweating and creating a big cloud of smoke for no good reason. So make conscious, strategic deals when you're trading with entropy. And remember that pretty much all of life is trading with entropy. So wake up, get conscious and conscientious everywhere you can. Remember that entropy values different things than you do, and optimize your trade so that you can get the most value out of your life. But entropy isn't just about matches, machines, and coffee mugs. It's about things like relationships too. Try telling your significant other that your relationship does not warrant any sacrifice, win-win style negotiations, or a change in wasteful habits. That will produce some instant entropy. No, that's not how it works. You invest your time and energy into your relationships so that you can maintain those relationships. And relationships are valuable. What's more important to you than your loved ones? When you first meet someone and feel that attraction, you're eager to build this new bond. And since you've been single a while, there's a lot of easily available, unused fuel that's been piling up there on the surface that's just waiting to be burned. So it burns, and it burns fast. Well, that's falling in love. But then that easy fuel gets scarcer and scarcer with time. And to keep the relationship growing, you have to find other sources of fuel, perhaps more hidden or nuanced sources. It's easy to create simple, temporary love with that extra fuel that's been laying around, but deeper, more complex love, the kind that provides you with real value, the kind that you can truly rely on, well, that requires a longer-term investment and a much more serious approach to sacrifice, win-win negotiating, and the efficiency in your lifestyle. And it also requires skillful automating, because relationships are repetitive like anything else. So be careful about what you're repeating. Are you unknowingly speeding up the entropy in your relationship? Are you unintentionally speeding up its natural tendency to decay? How many small, repeating, missed opportunities are playing out between you and the one you love? Now, those are all questions worth asking. They're worth asking in every corner of your life, from your coffee mugs to your marriage. Because being an anti-entropic device isn't only a clever science phrase to put on a t-shirt. It's a way of life. It's a role that's worth celebrating. It's a skill worth developing. It's a set of strategic choices about honoring what's valuable, about having gratitude for the opportunity to dance. And maybe, just maybe, if we continue to develop our skills as anti-entropic devices, we can slow down time zero until there's essentially no such thing. So there's my take on entropy. I hope you found some value in it. If so, please remember to subscribe and like and comment and do all that stuff on the website. It really helps a lot. And of course, the t-shirts are available at efficientwisdom.com. I hope to see you on the next one. Until then.